Today, the Prime Minister expected to reveal the draft referendum question to establish an Indigenous voice to Parliament.
Ukraine and Russia trade blame for a strike killing dozens of prisoners of war in Donetsk.
The results of Papua New Guinea's federal election delayed by a week in a decision that could spark a constitutional crisis.
Australia sweeps the medal podiums in swimming at the Commonwealth Games.
And we'll take a look at the future of sustainable food with one of the nominees for this year's Eureka Prize. Good morning. It is Saturday, the 30th of July. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim.
And I'm Joanna Nicholson. You're watching Weekend Breakfast, coming to you from the land of the Gadigal people. It's great to have your company this morning.
Now, the Prime Minister is expected to unveil a draft question that Australians could be asked during a referendum to create an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Anthony Albanese will make his first significant address to Aboriginal communities at the Garma Festival in the Northern Territory's northeast Arnhem Land today.
The government is not yet expected to set a date for the referendum, but it has previously indicated it could be held as soon as next year. Dan Borsha is at Garma for Weekend Breakfast for us this morning. Dan, it's great to see you there in Arnhem Land. What are we expecting from that very significant announcement today?
Good morning. It's great to be with you both here from Yolngu country in Arnhem Land. This stretch, Gulmarch, a very sacred and important site that for tens of thousands of years has been a meeting place, coming together to refresh, to reinvigorate, to have big conversations. And that's exactly what we're expecting today. Hope and humility. That's how the Prime Minister is expected to frame his announcement in his first set piece discussion on Indigenous affairs in an Indigenous community. And we are expected to see a lot more detail about the pathway to a voice. Just what would that look like and what would that contain? We understand that the speech by the Prime Minister today will include a proposed sequence of wording that would include the question, do you support an alteration to the Constitution that establishes an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice? And then would also go in further to offer more detail that there shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, that voice may make representations to Parliament and the executive government on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and that the Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have powers to make laws with respect to the composition, functions, powers, procedures of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. That last point, very important. The Constitutional Conservatives will be looking to that to ensure that this doesn't get in the way of the sovereignty of the federal parliament, that it really puts to bed once and for all that accusation that was made by a former Prime Minister that this would be a third chamber of parliament. There is a lot of anticipation here because we know that the Prime Minister, when first winning the election on the 21st of May, said right at the beginning that having a voice was a priority for him. Since then, he said this is simply a question about good manners, that it is about hearing, listening to the voices of First Nations Australians. Well, many of those people have gathered right here. More than 2,000 people have gathered here on Yolngu country, and there's already a great sense of anticipation from the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander leadership of the nation about just what next steps will pertain. Of course, it's worth noting that this is not something that has bipartisan support, and we have heard the new CLP Senator Jacinta Price in her first speech to Parliament this week saying that she wanted to see what tangible difference would this make, what outcomes would it see on issues around Indigenous incarceration, on the crippling rates of domestic violence in some remote Indigenous communities, on issues around education and the like. So there is likely to be a lot more discussion. Jacinta Price, one of those Indigenous leaders gathering here, and we'll have a lot more coverage as we hear the detail and the reaction across today.
Yes, we will indeed. A very significant day. Dan Borsha there, thank you. And we will, as Dan mentioned, be returning to him throughout the morning to cover this very significant festival, the Garma Festival there in Arnhem Land, and all the developments, especially from Anthony Albanese today.